Imagine boarding a flight, excited for a new adventure, only to be greeted by a flight attendant whose attitude shifts the moment she sees you. That's exactly what happened to our main character today, a man dressed simply, just looking for a quiet trip. But instead of hospitality, he's met with cold stares, rude remarks, and an accidental spill of food right in his lap. Why? Because she assumes he's just another poor passenger. But here's the twist. What she doesn't know is this man isn't just anyone. He's the CEO of a major company, and her behavior is about to backfire in a way she never saw coming. How did it escalate to this moment? What will happen when she finally realizes who he really is? Stay tuned, because this story is one you won't forget. The flight had just taken off, and the man sat quietly by the window, looking out at the clouds as the world below grew smaller. He wasn't flashy, dressed in a simple button-up shirt and jeans, but there was something calm and confident about him. To the flight attendant, however, he was just another passenger she didn't feel like giving much effort to. She glanced at him with a raised eyebrow, muttering under her breath about how people like him always seem to expect special treatment. When the meal service began, her attitude shifted from indifferent to outright dismissive. She slammed his tray down harder than necessary, causing the drink to slosh dangerously close to his lap. But it didn't stop there. As she leaned over to serve the next row, her arm accidentally knocked the food right onto his shirt. She barely offered an apology, brushing it off like it wasn't her problem. The man calmly looked down at the mess on his shirt, his expression unreadable. Passengers nearby watched, some whispering to each other, while the flight attendant barely acknowledged what had happened. She gave him a quick, insincere sorry about that, before turning her attention elsewhere. But her tone carried no remorse. It almost sounded like she found it amusing. One of the other attendants noticed the incident and offered to help clean up, but the first one waved her off, insisting, "It's fine. He'll manage." The man didn't argue. He simply took a napkin from his tray and began wiping his shirt, his calm demeanor masking whatever he might have been feeling. Little did she know, this wasn't just any passenger who would quietly endure her mistreatment. A couple of rows back, another traveler had been recording the interaction on their phone, capturing every detail. It wouldn't stay hidden for long. As the flight continued, the tension in the air grew thicker. The man stayed quiet, but his calm exterior only seemed to irritate the flight attendant more. Every time she passed his row, her dismissive glances and smug expressions made it clear she thought she could get away with treating him poorly. Other passengers were starting to notice, exchanging uneasy looks and murmurs about her behavior. The passenger with the phone had now recorded several clips, including the flight attendant's careless remarks and the food incident. Meanwhile, the man remained composed, almost as if he was waiting for the right moment to respond. When the pilot made an announcement about the plane beginning its descent, the flight attendant walked down the aisle, her attitude unchanged. But as she reached the man's row, something unexpected happened. He calmly reached for his briefcase, and the name on the shiny gold plate caught her eye. Her face paled instantly. The flight attendant froze, her eyes locked on the briefcase. The engraved name wasn't just familiar. It was tied to a company she had heard of countless times, a company known for its influence and success. Her mind raced, piecing together the details she had overlooked, his calm demeanor, his quiet confidence, and the way he had handled her behavior without anger. Trying to recover, she quickly plastered on a nervous smile and said, "Oh, I didn't realize you were someone important." Her tone shifted from dismissive to overly polite, but the man didn't respond right away. Instead, he calmly placed the briefcase back under his seat and looked up at her, his expression still unreadable. Meanwhile, the passenger with the phone wasn't the only one watching now. Almost everyone nearby was tuned in, sensing the shift in the flight attendant's demeanor. The tension was electric, but the man's next move was still a mystery. The man finally broke his silence, his voice calm but firm. "Someone important?" he repeated, his words cutting through the uneasy tension. "I was just another passenger to you earlier, wasn't I?" The flight attendant fumbled for a response, her face flushed with embarrassment. "I didn't mean," she started, but he held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. Reaching into his briefcase, he pulled out a business card and placed it on the tray table in front of him. The gold lettering shimmered under the cabin lights, and the passengers closest to him leaned in to read it. The company name, his title as CEO. It was all there. Gasps rippled through the aisle, and the flight attendant's expression turned to one of sheer panic. But before she could say another word, the man looked her in the eye and said, "Respect shouldn't depend on status. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity." Then, turning to the other flight attendant who had tried to help earlier, he handed her the card. "Please have your manager reach out to me. I'd like to commend your professionalism." As the plane touched down and passengers began to disembark, the man's words hung heavy in the air. But just as he stood to leave, he leaned in slightly and said something to the stunned flight attendant that no one else could hear. She stood frozen, her eyes wide, as he walked away with quiet confidence. Whatever he said, it left an impact she would never forget. As the man exited the plane, a quiet buzz filled the cabin. Passengers whispered about what had just unfolded, many clearly moved by his calm yet powerful approach. The flight attendant remained standing near the aisle, her face a mix of shock and reflection. Whatever he had said to her in those final moments clearly struck a chord. The other flight attendant, now holding his business card, glanced back at her colleague with a knowing look. It was a reminder that kindness and professionalism truly matter, no matter who you're serving. Outside the terminal, the man walked away, blending seamlessly into the crowd, as though nothing extraordinary had happened. But for everyone who had witnessed the encounter, it was unforgettable. It wasn't just about status or power. It was about integrity and treating people with respect, regardless of appearances. A simple lesson, but one she, and the rest of us, wouldn't forget.